Double Indemnity wasn't just a movie about murder and betrayal. It was Hollywood's perfect crime against its own censors. A film so scandalous that multiple studios rejected it. A production where its two greatest writers despised each other, where its stars feared career suicide, and where real-life tragedy became cinema's most influential nightmare. What audiences saw in 1944 was a groundbreaking thriller. What they didn't know was that behind those Venetian blind shadows lay a story of creative warfare, moral panic, deleted executions, and one director's refusal to compromise his vision no matter the cost. Here are 20 shocking facts about the film that defined film noir, and make sure you stay until the end for a bonus fact about the real murder that Hollywood tried desperately to forget. Number 20. The screenwriters who hated each other's guts. Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler created one of the greatest screenplays in cinema history. They also couldn't stand being in the same room together. Chandler, a recovering alcoholic, was revolted by Wilder's constant drinking and womanizing. Wilder found Chandler's pipe smoke nauseating and his work habits glacial. The tension became so unbearable that Chandler drafted an official memo to Paramount listing his grievances, including the fact that Wilder wore his hat indoors. Chandler quit entirely at one point and refused to return unless his demands were met. Yet through 4 months of mutual torment, they crafted dialogue so sharp it still cuts. Wilder later admitted, "I drove him back into drinking." Chandler bitterly wrote in the Atlantic Monthly that he wasn't even invited to the film's press review. Wilder's response? "How could we? He was under the table drunk." Their collaboration was toxic, brilliant, and absolutely necessary proof that great art sometimes requires two people who fundamentally cannot stand each other. Number 19. Fred MacMurray's career suicide gamble. When Billy Wilder approached Fred MacMurray to play a cold-blooded murderer, MacMurray was Hollywood's highest-paid actor. His response was blunt, "You're making the mistake of your life." MacMurray believed playing Walter Neff, an insurance salesman who commits premeditated murder, would destroy his wholesome image. "I am only a saxophone player. I can do a little comedy. Don't shove me. Don't ruin my career." Paramount executives, in contract negotiations with the actor, let him take the role hoping it would humble him. Wilder had to practically harass MacMurray into accepting. The irony? It became the performance of MacMurray's life. He later admitted, "I never dreamed it would be the best picture I ever made." Yet despite this triumph, MacMurray immediately retreated to safe territory, never fully embracing the darkness again. The gamble paid off, but only once. Number 18. Barbara Stanwyck's wig disaster. Paramount production head Buddy DeSilva watched early rushes and made a devastating observation. "We hired Barbara Stanwyck, and here we get George Washington." He was talking about the cheap blonde wig Billy Wilder insisted she wear to make Phyllis look as sleazy as possible. A week into shooting, Wilder realized his mistake, but too much footage existed to reshoot. For years, Wilder claimed the bad wig was intentional. But he finally admitted, "I am stuck. I can't reshoot 4 weeks of stuff. I am totally stuck." When people pointed out how terrible it looked, Wilder deflected, "You noticed that? That was my intention. I wanted the phoniness in the girl." Wilder later called it the biggest mistake of my career. The future femme fatale spent the entire film looking like George Washington in drag. Number 17. The gas chamber ending that vanished. Billy Wilder spent 5 days and $150,000 filming an ending audiences would never see. The original screenplay called for Walter Neff to be executed in the gas chamber while Barton Keyes watched. Wilder built an exact replica of San Quentin's chamber, complete with 2 chairs, one for Neff, one empty. The scene showed MacMurray and Robinson delivering what Wilder called a wonderful look between the two as gas filled the chamber. But after viewing the previous scene, Neff collapsing with Keyes lighting his cigarette, Wilder realized he had already said everything. The story was between the two guys. What the hell do we need to see him die for? The production code also deemed it unduly gruesome. Wilder cut it. The footage, despite being brilliantly directed, was discarded. Production stills survive, but the actual film has been lost. The scene was moving, and it was absolutely unnecessary. Number 16. The real murder that inspired a nightmare. James M. Cain didn't invent Double Indemnity's plot, he stole it from the headlines. In March 1927, Queens housewife Ruth Snyder and her lover, corset salesman Henry Judd Gray, murdered Ruth's husband Albert in one of the Jazz Age's most sensational crimes. Ruth had forged a $45,000 insurance policy with a double indemnity clause without Albert's knowledge. The murder was brutally incompetent. They beat Albert with a window sash weight, strangled him with wire, and stuffed chloroform rags in his nose. Their burglary cover-up was transparent. Both confessed, but turned on each other. Ruth became tabloid gold, dubbed Ruthless Ruth, the Viking ice matron. On January 12, 1928, She became the first woman executed at Sing Sing since 1899. A photographer smuggled an ankle-strapped camera into the chamber and captured the electrocution. The Daily News published it under Dead. It sold out in 15 minutes. Kane, covering the trial, was mesmerized. He transformed Queen's tragedy into noir mythology. Number 15. Edward G. Robinson's Wounded Pride. Edward G. Robinson was a megastar when Double Indemnity came calling, but third billing behind MacMurray and Stanwyck stung deeply. Initially resistant, Robinson reflected that, "At my age, it was time to begin thinking of character roles." There was financial consolation. Robinson earned the same $100,000 as his co-stars but worked far less. While MacMurray and Stanwyck carried the murder plot, Robinson delivered crackling monologues and lit MacMurray's cigarettes. He swallowed his pride, took the role, and stole nearly every scene. The supporting character became the film's moral compass, and arguably its most memorable performance. Number 14. George Raft's Spectacular Stupidity. Before Fred MacMurray ever read the script, Billy Wilder approached George Raft, the actor famous for playing gangsters and tough guys. Raft didn't read scripts. He had people tell him what they were about. When Wilder described the plot, Raft interrupted with a question, "Let's get to the lapel bit." When the guy flashes his lapel, you see his badge. You know he is a detective. Wilder, confused, explained that Walter Neff wasn't a detective or an undercover cop. Neff was just an insurance salesman who commits murder. Without that lapel bit, without Neff being revealed as a good guy all along, Raft wanted nothing to do with it. He turned the part down flat. This was the last in a staggering series of films Raft rejected that became classics. He had previously passed on High Sierra, The Maltese Falcon, and Casablanca. His career judgment was so catastrophically bad that he became Hollywood's cautionary tale, the man who could sniff out a masterpiece and run screaming in the opposite direction. MacMurray later said, "George Raft turned down everything that ever became a success. Raft's loss became MacMurray's gain and cinema's eternal treasure." Number 13. The canned food was under armed guard. The film's most atmospheric location is the grocery store where Walter and Phyllis hold their clandestine meetings. But looking at the shelves in those scenes reveals a shocking reality of 1944. The store was a meticulously dressed set at Paramount, filled with thousands of dollars of real canned goods. Because the film was shot during the height of World War II rationing, those stacks of beans and soup were more valuable than gold. They were so valuable, in fact, that Paramount had to hire security guards to watch the set overnight, not to protect the cameras or the stars, but to stop the crew from stealing the food. While MacMurray and Stanwyck were plotting a fake murder, the studio was running a very real military operation just to keep the props from being eaten. Number 12. Raymond Chandler's humiliating debut. When Billy Wilder hired Raymond Chandler, the celebrated author assumed screenwriting would be quick. Chandler demanded $1,000 and promised completion a week from Monday. He didn't know he'd be paid $750 weekly for 4 grueling months of collaboration. When Chandler returned with 80 pages, Wilder read them and threw them at Chandler, literally hitting him in the chest. "This is absolute bullshit," Wilder said. Chandler had filled pages with camera directions and technical instructions to prove he had grasped the technique. He fundamentally misunderstood screenwriting. Wilder gave him an earlier script to study. Those months were torture, but Chandler, humiliated and furious, absorbed Wilder's lessons. He later acknowledged, "I learned about as much about screenwriting as I am capable of learning." The education came at the price of his pride and sobriety. Number 11. Kate Smith's Morality Crusade. When Double Indemnity was released in July 1944, it faced an unexpected enemy. Kate Smith, the beloved singer known for her patriotic anthem, "God Bless America." Smith launched a public morality campaign urging Americans to boycott the film, denouncing it as indecent and corrupting. She appeared on her radio show and in public statements calling on decent people to stay away from Paramount's scandalous production. The campaign made headlines. James M. Cain, the author of the original novella, later recalled, "There was a little trouble caused by this fat girl, Kate Smith, who carried on a propaganda asking people to stay away from the picture." But Smith's crusade backfired spectacularly. Rather than hurting the film, her moral outrage generated publicity and curiosity. People who might have ignored the film now desperately wanted to see what was so offensive. Cain estimated that Smith's protest probably added about $1 million to the film's gross. The irony was delicious. America's sweetheart of wholesome entertainment became Double Indemnity's best marketing tool. Nothing sells tickets like someone telling you a movie is too immoral to watch. Number 10. The Production Code's Towel Obsession. When Paramount submitted Double Indemnity to the Motion Picture Association for approval, Joseph Breen raised numerous objections. But one fixation stood above all others: Barbara Stanwyck's towel. In the iconic opening scene, Phyllis Dietrichson appears at the top of her staircase wrapped only in a bath towel after showering. Breen wrote an explicit demand: the bath towel must properly cover Phyllis and should certainly go below her knees. There must be no unacceptable exposure. The censors were obsessed with that towel. They wanted to measure it. They wanted guarantees it wouldn't slip. They wanted full coverage from neck to knee. Wilder complied, sort of. Stanwyck wore a towel that technically met the requirements, but the way she wore it, the way the camera lingered on her anklet as she descended the stairs, the pure eroticism Wilder and cinematographer John F. Seitz created with lighting and shadow, it made the scene burn with barely contained sexuality despite the towel covering everything. Breen also objected to the whole sequence of the detailed disposition of the corpse and the gas chamber execution as unduly gruesome. Wilder gave ground where he had to, but fought for every frame of erotic tension he could steal. The towel stayed. Cinema won. Number 9. Wilder's advertising war with Selznick. In 1944, David O. Selznick released Since You Went Away and launched a massive advertising campaign proclaiming, "Since you went away are the 4 most important words in movies since Gone with the Wind," which Selznick had also produced. Billy Wilder, never one to back down from a fight, decided to troll Hollywood's most powerful producer. He personally bought trade paper advertisements declaring, "Double Indemnity are the 2 most important words in the motion picture industry since Broken Blossoms," referencing the 1919 D.W. Griffith classic. Selznick was furious. He considered legal action and threatened to stop advertising in any trade publication that continued running Wilder's ads. But Wilder had an even more powerful ally. Alfred Hitchcock, who had his own contentious relationship with Selznick, jumped into the fray with his own advertisement. Since Double Indemnity, the 2 most important words in motion pictures are Billy Wilder. It was Hollywood egos at war, fought through newspaper advertisements. Selznick seethed, Wilder laughed, and Hitchcock got the last word, crowning Wilder as the industry's new master. Number 8. The music that sounded like a beer garden battle. While Billy Wilder was fighting the censors, he was also fighting his own studio's music department. Paramount's musical director Louis Lipstone absolutely hated Miklos Raza's score. The music was dissonant, harsh, and unsettling, exactly what a noir needs, but not what a studio executive wanted to hear. Lipstone summoned Wilder and Raza to his office and screamed at them, claiming the music was hard to listen to and sounded like a battle in a beer garden. He demanded they scrap it for something more melodic. Wilder, never one to bite his tongue, shot back, "You may be surprised to hear this, but I love the music." Wilder refused to change a single note. The result? Raza's beer garden noise became the definitive sound of film noir, earning an Academy Award nomination and influencing every thriller score that followed. The executive wanted pretty. Wilder wanted panic. Panic won. Number 7. James M. Cain's astonishing confession. After watching Double Indemnity, the author of the original novella did something almost unheard of in Hollywood. He praised the adaptation as superior to his own work. James M. Cain admitted, "It is the only picture I ever saw made from my books that had things in it I wish I had thought of." Wilder's ending was much better than my ending, and his device for letting the guy tell the story by taking out the office dictating machine, I would have done it if I had thought of it. This was extraordinary. Authors typically despise film adaptations of their work, but Cain recognized that Wilder and Chandler had improved his story. They had eliminated Cain's complicated Latin America escape ending, with its double suicide at sea, in favor of the wounded Neff confessing into a dictaphone. They had deepened the relationship between Neff and Keyes, transforming it into the film's emotional core. They had sharpened the dialogue until it cut like glass. Cain surrendered completely. "If I had come up with some of the solutions to the plot that screenwriters Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler did," he said, "I would have employed them in my original novel." Wilder marked Cain's praise as one of the 2 high points of his entire career. Number 6. The film nobody knew how to categorize. When Double Indemnity premiered in 1944, critics and audiences were confused about what they were watching. The term film noir wouldn't be coined until French critic Nino Frank wrote about it in 1946, and it wouldn't become common language in America until the 1970s. Reviewers struggled to describe what Wilder had created. Was it a crime film? A thriller? A romantic drama? Some called it un-American in its cynicism. Others praised it as daringly realistic. The New York Times' Bosley Crowther complained about its monotonous pace, but acknowledged its realism reminiscent of the bite of past French films. The film existed in a category that didn't yet have a name. This genre confusion may have hurt Double Indemnity at the Oscars. Voters literally didn't know how to process what they were seeing. Wilder later stated, "I never heard that expression film noir when I made Double Indemnity. I just made pictures I would have liked to see." He was inventing a visual and narrative language that would define a generation of filmmaking, but he was doing it blind, without knowing the rules, because the rules didn't exist yet. He was writing them in shadow and light. Number 5. The budget that came in under despite everything. Despite 4 months of screenwriting agony, a wig disaster, a filmed then deleted $150,000 gas chamber scene, and 2 nervous stars who thought the film might ruin their careers, Billy Wilder brought Double Indemnity in under Paramount's allocated budget. The final cost was $927,262 under the studio's $980,000 budget. This was remarkable considering the salaries. $100,000 each for MacMurray, Stanwyck, and Robinson alone consumed $300,000. Wilder himself received $44,000 for writing, plus $26,000 for directing, meaning those 4 people alone ate up $370,000 of the budget. The production was meticulously planned and efficiently executed despite the creative warfare behind the scenes. Wilder shot for approximately 4 months, wrapping on November 24, 1943. By January 1944, he had completed editing and knew he had a masterpiece. He proclaimed his genius on the Paramount lot, suggesting he was the studio's last real talent since Preston Sturges had left. He wasn't wrong. The film was tight, lean, and lethal. Wilder considered it his best film because it had so few scripting and shooting errors. For a production that seemed cursed from the beginning, everything came together with terrifying precision. Number 4. Barbara Stanwyck's Mouse Question. Barbara Stanwyck was the highest-paid woman in America when Billy Wilder approached her to play Phyllis Dietrichson, not just the highest-paid actress, but the highest-paid woman in any profession. Despite her power and success, Stanwyck was terrified of the role. She had built her career playing heroines strong women audiences could root for. The idea of playing an out-and-out killer, as she put it, felt like career suicide. When she expressed her fears to Wilder, he asked her a question that would become Hollywood legend. "Well, are you a mouse or an actress?" Those 6 words changed everything. Stanwyck, who had clawed her way up from poverty and never backed down from a challenge, couldn't refuse. She took the role and transformed it into one of the most iconic performances in cinema history. Her Phyllis Dietrichson became the template for every femme fatale that followed: cold, calculating, erotic, and utterly ruthless. Years later, Stanwyck said it was the part everyone always asked her about and the most important role she ever played. Wilder later praised her as good an actress as I have ever worked with. Very meticulous about her work. We rehearsed hard. There were no retakes. A mouse or an actress? Stanwyck proved she was a goddamn lioness. Number 3. Charles Brackett's moral exit. Billy Wilder's longtime writing partner Charles Brackett refused to work on Double Indemnity, citing the story's scandalous and amoral nature as too disturbing for his conscience. Brackett and Wilder had already written 8 films together, including Ninotchka and The Major and the Minor. They were one of Hollywood's most successful teams. But Brackett drew a line at murder, adultery, and insurance fraud. He helped with the initial treatment before bowing out completely. Wilder later characterized their separation with typical acidity. Any Tendez. 1944 was the year of infidelities. Charlie produced The Uninvited. I don't think he ever forgave me. He always thought I cheated on him with Raymond Chandler. The split was temporary. Brackett would return to collaborate with Wilder on The Lost Weekend, A Foreign Affair, and Sunset Boulevard. But Double Indemnity forced Wilder to find new creative blood, leading to the toxic but brilliant partnership with Chandler. Sometimes betrayal, even creative betrayal, leads to something darker and more powerful than loyalty ever could. Brackett wanted to protect his conscience. Wilder wanted to make a film that would change cinema. Only one of them succeeded. Number 2. John F. Seitz's Shadow Masterclass. Cinematographer John F. Seitz didn't just photograph Double Indemnity, he invented a visual language that would define film noir for decades. Seitz used what he called Venetian blind lighting to create prison bar shadows across characters' faces, visually trapping them in their own moral cages. He employed harsh angles, deep shadows, and extreme contrast to create what Barbara Stanwyck called one sensational mood. Stanwyck later reflected, "The way those sets were lit, the house, Walter's apartment, those dark shadows, those slices of harsh light at strange angles, all that helped my performance." Seitz achieved specific effects through technical innovation. For the waning sunlight effect in the Dietrichson house, he mixed silver dust with smoke. He used mirrors and reflective surfaces to create disorienting compositions. He shot through objects to fragment the frame. Roger Ebert later wrote that Seitz's photography helped develop the noir style of sharp-edged shadows and shots, strange angles, and lonely Edward Hopper settings. Everything that would come to define noir visually, the shadows, the angles, the sense of characters trapped in darkness, Seitz crystallized in this film. Cinematographers are studying Double Indemnity to this day, trying to understand how Seitz made darkness look so absolutely seductive. Number 1. The strangest love scene in history. While the internet loves to claim Raymond Chandler has a cameo in the film, that is a total myth. The real hidden secret isn't a person, it is a gesture. Throughout the film, you will notice that Walter Neff repeatedly lights cigarettes for Barton Keyes with a match. This isn't just a character quirk, it is the film's true love language. In the original script, the romance was between Walter and Phyllis. But as filming progressed, Wilder realized the emotional core of the movie was actually the bond between the murderer, Walter, and the claims adjuster, Keyes. The match-lighting ritual became their way of saying, "I love you," without saying it. This culminates in the film's devastating final shot. As Walter lies dying, Keyes, who has never lit a cigarette for anyone, finally strikes the match for Walter. It is a reversal of their entire relationship, a moment of forgiveness and tenderness in the middle of a crime scene. It remains one of the most powerful, unspoken declarations of love in movie history, proving that in the cynical world of noir, the only real heart belonged to the two men trying to outsmart each other. Bonus fact, the anklet that changed everything. The iconic anklet that Phyllis Dietrichson wears, the piece of jewelry that the camera lingers on as she descends the staircase, that has become one of cinema's most famous erotic symbols, doesn't appear anywhere in James M. Cain's original novella. It was the invention of Billy Wilder and costume designer Edith Head. Wilder specifically asked for it, believing it made Stanwyck look cheap and trashy, a visual signal that this woman was dangerous. But the anklet became something more. According to urban legend that was circulating even in 1944, a married woman wearing an anklet on her right ankle was signaling that she was married but available to other men. Whether or not this legend was true, Wilder and Seitz used it. They shot the anklet in such a way that it became a visual declaration of Phyllis's availability, her sexuality, and her transgression. That single piece of jewelry, an invention that wasn't in the source material, became one of the film's most enduring images. Decades later, when films like Body Heat, 1981, paid homage to Double Indemnity, they included their own versions of the anklet. Edith Head, who designed costumes for over 1,100 films and won 8 Academy Awards, considered this one piece of jewelry among her most influential contributions. A tiny circle of gold and the right camera angle, that is all it took to create an eternal symbol of forbidden desire. Double Indemnity endures not merely as a great crime film, but as proof that the best art emerges from conflict, compromise, and the refusal to accept safe choices. Every element that makes it brilliant, the sharp dialogue, the moral ambiguity, the visual darkness, the refusal to provide easy answers, came from people fighting each other, fighting the studio, fighting the censors, and fighting their own fears. Billy Wilder bet his career on a story everybody said was unfilmable. 2 writers who hated each other created a perfect screenplay. 3 actors terrified of playing killers delivered the performances of their lives. And one film changed cinema forever by refusing to apologize for showing American darkness in American lives.